नमस्कार दोस्तों। और आज हम फिर एक बार फिर लाइव हैं और इस बार 4 बजे की जगह 7 बजे शाम को लाइव है। और 7 बजे का कारण एक बहुत बड़ा था, क्योंकि आज हमारा सेशन जो है ये मनीष ले रहे हैं, मनीष रॉबर्ट्स, और ये यूएस से ले रहे हैं। और हम उनको सैटरडे को एकदम सुबह सुबह बुला लिया है। इस समय करीब 8:30 बज रहे हैं टेक्सास में। तो मनीष, कॉफी विद मनीष हो गया एक तरीके से सेशन। फ्रेंड्स, मनीष हमारे ग्रुप में अक्सर काफी ग्लैमरस फोटो डालते रहते हैं, और जितने यंगस्टर्स हैं वो बड़े क्रेजी हैं मनीष की फोटोज को देख के। ऑफलाइन भी मनीष, मुझे काफी लोगों ने आपके बारे में पूछा, आपकी फोटोग्राफ के बारे में पूछा। तो मनीष, आप प्रोफेशनली करते हो ये शूट की शौकिया तौर पे करते हो?
मेरे लिए प्रोफेशनली अभी ऑप्शन है, बट मैं शौकिया ही करता हूँ। मेरे ग्रुप में काफी प्रोफेशनल्स एक्चुअली हैं, जो वेडिंग फोटोग्राफर्स हैं, कुछ पोर्ट्रेट फोटोग्राफर्स हैं। एक स्क्वाड डालस फोर्ट वर्थ फोटोग्राफी स्क्वाड चलाता हूँ, उसमें हैं मेरे फ्रेंड्स हैं काफी, वो प्रोफेशनल हैं। बट मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है, फुल टाइम जॉब, सो वीकेंड्स ही काम करने को मिलता है फोटो।
तो मनीष, आप मतलब क्या क्या पसंद करते हो? ग्लैमर के अलावा और कुछ भी करते हो कि ग्लैमर ही ग्लैमर आप शूट करते हो?
No, मेरा ग्लैमर के अलावा बेसिकली आई शूट एवरीथिंग, लैंडस्केप, आर्किटेक्चर, एस्ट्रो फोटोग्राफी, एंड होपफुली विल उसमें भी एक सेशन करेंगे। जस्ट अबाउट एनी एरिया। सो पोर्ट्रेट ऑब्वियसली इजीएस्ट है, अगर साथ में मॉडल है देन यू कैन जस्ट गो अबाउट डूइंग टेकिंग फोटोग्राफ्स। लैंडस्केप में यू हैव टू रियली प्लान थिंग्स।
मॉडल्स के साथ में बड़ा चैलेंज हो जाता है कि मॉडल्स को पोज कैसे कराएं। मॉडल्स तो मिल जाती हैं, लेकिन मॉडल्स की पोजिंग नहीं समझ में आती। तो लेट अस स्टार्ट। मेरे ख्याल से आज अभी जितने हैं, लेट अस स्टार्ट, पीपल विल जॉइन अस, है ना? तो ओवर टू यू मनीष। मैं अब बैकग्राउंड में जा रहा हूँ, जरूरत पड़ी तो मैं फ्रंट में आऊंगा। तो हैंडिंग ओवर यू दिस सेशन।
ठीक है। नमस्ते भाइयों और बहनों। आई डोंट नो कितने लोग ज्वाइन किए हैं। आई सी वन। हाय मनीष, एंड हेलो टू यू एज वेल। थोड़ा मेरा बैकग्राउंड, मैं रजनीश और मैं फ्रेंड्स हैं स्कूल के दिनों से। करीब करीब ऑलमोस्ट 40 साल होने आ रहे हैं, हम एक दूसरे को जानते हैं। दोनों रायपुर के होली क्रॉस में थे हम लोग, हाफ पैंट पहनकर घूमते थे बाहर। सो हमारी दोस्ती काफी पीछे जाती है। यूएस, मैं इंडिया से इंजीनियरिंग करने के बाद एसएपी कंसल्टेंट बनकर यूरोप और यूरोप में फ्रैंकफर्ट जर्मनी में रहने के बाद यूएसए आया। यूएसए में आने के बाद इट्स बीन अबाउट 25 years बीइंग आउट ऑफ इंडिया। अभी राइट नाउ आई वर्क विद चिल्ड्रंस हॉस्पिटल फोर्ट वर्थ डालस एरिया में, एंड एज अ डायरेक्टर ऑफ हेल्थ केयर इकोनॉमिक्स। मेरा एरिया है क्लिनिकल एंड फाइनेंशियल एनालिसिस। फोटोग्राफी मेरा एक शौक है, और ये शौक काफी पहले शुरू हुआ। मेरा पहला कैमरा एक्चुअली, मैं लास्ट वीक अपने एक फ्रेंड से बात कर रहा था कि मुझे एक वो कैमरा वापस लेना है, एंड दैट वाज याशिका मैट। यू मे ऑल हैव सीन दैट कैमरा। वो कैमरा, आई थिंक आई एम गोइंग टू गेट वन जस्ट एज अ हॉबी, लाइक फिल्म से शूट करने के लिए। And that was when I was like maybe less than 10 years old. Fast forward 1990s में US आने के बाद I love traveling. काफी travel करता हूँ, so I take a lot of portrait, landscape and portrait to go with it. 1990s में I bought my first SLR, जो film SLR था, Minolta. And early 2000, I think it was December 2003, finally मैंने एक digital SLR, digital camera खरीदने का सोचा, and I bought actually not an SLR or DSLR, but actually a prosumer camera, which was a Sony F828. अभी भी मेरे साथ है, 17 साल पुराना, and अभी भी मैं इसको यूज करता हूँ। And I will tell you how I use it, especially for portraits. उसमें एक फीचर है जो किसी भी और दूसरे कैमरे में नहीं है, एंड इनफैक्ट मैं कल उसको यूज करने वाला हूँ एक बच्ची का फोटो लेने के लिए। Then around 2010, I decided, okay, it's time to get with interchangeable lens again. And मेरे पास पुराने SLR के lenses थे, so I bought Sony Alpha, जो कि Minolta, Sony ने Minolta को खरीद लिया था 2006 में. So I started with Sony Alpha DSLT, and I loved those cameras. I still have that camera also. 2011 May, I decided to add mirrorless camera, Sony NEX3. Initially, Sony NEX3 I bought only to use with old manual legacy lenses. And there is something about old lenses. Manual, fully manual, you have to set your aperture, you have to set your focus, you have to, basically it's all up to the photographer. And it's a very, in my opinion, that is the best way to learn photography. Automatic में अपन set करके photo तो खींच सकते हैं, but when you start using manual settings, it just makes you feel more connected, and you actually see the results a little more easily, I guess, and you have greater control too. Anyway, DSLR maybe, or दूसरे mirrorless cameras maybe, you have options to choose between semi-automatic mode like auto, I mean not auto, sorry, aperture priority and shutter priority, or go full manual. But I just love manual lenses, old lenses, and for portrait, actually, that is one of the best options. Let me show you one of my favorite lenses. Actually, I have quite a few favorite lenses. This small lens, this lens is from 1959. इसका जो series number है, वो 1959 का manufacturing date है उसका. And this is a Canon 51.4 lens. It's not a Canon mount. It's actually a Leica rangefinder के लिए ये lens बनाया था Canon ने, when they had just started building those lenses. So this is one of the fun lenses that I use. And portraiture के लिए, sometimes it's funny. We always look for lenses that are very sharp, very high contrast. Not always that is true. And here is why I'll say that sometimes very sharp lenses can also cause a lot of छोटी-छोटी skin में जो issues हैं, for example, that sometimes you don't want to show that. Sometimes you want to control that. You don't want very high contrast either. More often than not, once I take the picture, I sometimes end up reducing the contrast in Lightroom or Capture One. I actually use both. और उसका भी कारण है, and we will probably discuss it as a part of another session, but उसका एक कारण मैं बता देता हूँ कि your skin tones and all look better desaturated, especially for women. Female photography में, you need to make sure that you do that. So my early cameras were obviously APS-C, and then 3 साल पहले मैंने Sony A9 add किया अपने उसमें, तो full frame. So it doesn't really matter whether you shoot APS-C or full frame. I actually carry both. अभी मेरे पास Sony NEX6 है. I'm going to replace it with something newer. Obviously another Sony, so I can use all of my lenses. जो full frame lenses है, so, I can use on my APS-C camera also with a different field of view. So I wanted to touch, before getting under the posing section, I want to quickly touch on field of view, depth of field. I know you have heard it over and over, but I just wanted to give my version of it and why you would choose one lens over the other, especially for portraiture. Landscape, architecture, you want to cover as much or as little, or that's up to you. But with portrait, you have to consider who you are shooting, how you are shooting, where you are shooting. So, मेरे 3 lenses हैं, the primary lenses that I use. ये है Sony 55 1.8. Now, one of my choices for lenses is that I like them to be small and light, so I can carry them around easily. Modern lenses like this is a 51.4 from old days. This is a 55, and this lens is very small compared to the new 51.4 or any of those lenses. This is actually one of the smallest lenses that is out there for mirrorless cameras. But this is 51.8. I have this 85 1.8 on my camera. And the third lens I like is 135 1.8. Now most people probably want to shoot 70 200 2.8, which is actually a good option also. It's more um, easier to work with. Zoom lens obviously makes it easier to compose and recompose and all that. Not always possible with prime lenses, but I prefer prime lenses and I don't have a problem changing lenses. But usually this is the lens I'll shoot with. So it's the well, this one is Zeiss Batis 85 1.8. Because on full frame 85 actually works well. अगर आप APS-C से shoot करते हैं so I will recommend something between 50 to 60 mm, because then you actually are not confined by the space. अगर आप studio में shoot कर रहे हैं, indoor shoot कर रहे हैं, तो sometimes 85 on a full frame or even that may actually be very narrow. So what is narrow versus wide? Field of, so we talk about focal length, 55, 85 and 135. तीन लेंस में मैंने अभी आपको दिखाया. So 55 really doesn't mean much because अगर आप उसी लेंस को APS-C में डालेंगे तो it actually is still 55 mm lens, but उसका एक field of view है जो define करता है उसका sensor size. Sensor size उसका define करेगा. So field of view is how much the lens is covering onto the sensor. 55 mm lens on full frame is similar to 35 mm lens on a APS-C camera. And then you go to 85, which is similar to about 55, 56 mm on on an APS-C camera, 85 on full frame camera. And 135 is similar to, on full frame, is similar to using about 85 to 90 millimeter lens on an APS-C camera. So you can use any of these lenses. You don't have to look for full frame. You don't have to worry about not having one. They all do a good job. It's more about composition. It's more about posing, more about lighting. These are more important things than whether you shoot full frame or, and it don't have to be expensive. I have some of the lenses that are really cheap. So if you don't have a expensive lens, don't worry about it. Find eBay में जाओ और आप देख सकते हो कि कई बार आपको अच्छे lenses पुराने मिलेंगे and you'll probably enjoy it more shooting. अगर आपके पास, especially आपके पास एक mirrorless camera है, तो they usually come with features that help you focus quickly. I actually even shoot sports with manual focus. 10 साल का practice में it becomes very easy, especially with focus peaking and all. I can actually focus track people. So what's the significance? Why would I use 55 over say 135? So field of view के साथ साथ एक consequence है, and field of view, as your field of view widens, which is छोटा focal length, it can start distorting image. And one of the good examples is our मैं laptop use कर रहा हूँ, उसका जो camera है, and I've come closer to you, my hand looks bigger. It's because it is stretching, and it's just the nature of wide angle. So, but 55 is actually reasonably safe on a full frame. 35 on APS-C is reasonably safe from certain distance. अगर आप, if you get too close, तो नाक लंबी दिखेगी, face distorted दिखेगा, and you get that effect more easily as you go wider. अगर आप और छोटे focal length का lens use करोगे तो. 85 is considered very safe. It's kind of a middle ground. 135 or 200. I also have a 200 2.8 that I use. That is from 1989, and that I've had for 30 years now. Those lenses will actually compress more. So अगर आप मेरे पीछे अगर poles होते, and if you use 200, you will see that the poles will come closer to me. अगर मैं उसी चीज को मैं 55 से लूंगा, the poles will appear farther apart. That's just the nature of field of view. So you have to keep these in mind when you're working with model, what lens and how far you should be standing. That's why normally I use this. If I have a lot of space shooting outdoors, I actually use 135 the most. But then there are situations where using 55 actually makes more sense. And these are environmental portraits where I want the model, that's the ambience. See, and I'll show you some examples, and I'll share a kind of a slideshow that we are going to work with through our WhatsApp um, attachment. So let me get started. Before I go and further, the other thing we obviously talk about, and I think some of you were in the um, session last night. Actually, for me it was last night. Is the aperture. Aperture is, if you notice, all three of mine actually are 1.8. Aperture is obviously usually considered for two things. One is controlling light, and the other is controlling the depth of field, or I prefer to call it background blur, because depth of field is kind of not the same thing, but what we really ultimately look for is the blur aspect. And the way you control blur is um, choosing a large aperture, obviously, but there is another thing important that goes with it. It's called the clear aperture. Clear aperture is basically आप अपना जैसे focal length आप define करो 135 1.8 लेंस, ठीक है? उसको आप 1.8 को divide करो और 135 को divide करो 1.8 से, it comes to I think about 75. So 75 millimeter is the clear aperture. That's really what is working. So, and that's why if you see here, it's a rather big front element, and that's at least going to be 75. I mean, obviously optical lens use करते हैं तो they can make it smaller and all that, but telescope ये word especially with astro, clear aperture is the word used. So that actually can give you a good example of what kind of blur you are going to get. So even though this and this, both of them, they both have 1.8 aperture, this is going to give me a lot more background blur than this one. And that's because of the clear aperture. Agar aap 55 ko divide karo 1.8 say, it comes to about 25 millimeter. This comes to about 75, so 3 times more. So that's important to consider also. Another thing that aperture does is, well, technically it doesn't really, but the other word I wanted to bring up is the T-stop. Now, most lenses में आपको T-stop नहीं दिखेगा. And T-stop is actually not the same thing as f-stop, although it is related. अगर आप बोले आपका लेंस f1.8 है, that doesn't mean दूसरा लेंस अगर मैं f1.8 use करूं तो I get the same amount through it. That depends how much I get, how much light goes through a lens depends on the T-stop. अगर आपके बहुत ज्यादा लेंस एलिमेंट्स हैं लेंस में तो the T-stop might be like T2.1. So it's not really like so it's compared to like say f2.1 rather. इसलिए मूवी के लेंस अगर आप देखेंगे तो they are always in T stops, they are never in f stops, because उसमें उनका exposure का काफी बड़ा significance होता है. And what is the significance of exposure in movies? Frame rate आप अपना choose करते हो, so you are not really too worried about the shutter speed, what we use it as shutter speed. However, T stop is what determines your shutter speed. In portraiture, T-stop is where you want to make sure that your minimum shutter speed is reasonable. क्योंकि आप मॉडल के साथ फोटो खींचते हो तो it may be a different type of posing, and we'll cover that also very shortly. Um, the photograph will be more about, okay, this is a single pose. I'm just going to sit like this and take a picture, right? No movement at all. You can take it at 1/60th of a second. I will say 1/25th of a second shutter speed is a good idea, better idea. Sometimes though, अगर आपके पास lighting का बहुत बड़ा challenge है, and this should not usually happen if you're shooting with a professional model or any of that sort, because you are expected to have lighting and all that to go with it. And that itself can be a very big session, and we can probably do that as well at some point, including off-camera flash. If anybody is interested, I can set up the whole thing and we can go over it. But अगर आप family के photo ले रहे हो, portrait ले रहे हो, then in that case sometimes indoors you may not have enough light. So in that case, you could push it to 1/30th of a second and make sure your model doesn't move at all, so you don't get the motion blur. But if you can, use 1/125th of a second or 1/250th of a second, just to be safe. Unless you're taking a dynamic pose, like I shoot with dancers and all quite a bit, so they are always moving. Obviously, if I shoot 120 to 50th of a second, I'll get a lot of motion blur. Unless that's my intention to get some blur, I would usually choose maybe no less than 1/500th of a second, and usually 1/1000th of a second. 800 also chalta, but somewhere between those two. So that's important. And I just want to show you one of my favorite lenses for last 10 years has been this little, well, it's not really a little. This is another 135 mm lens. And in this one, actually, this is a Sony 135 2.8 STF. STF is smooth transition focus, and this lens is actually gold lens. It's a special type of lens that was not very common. Now Fuji has come up with one. Canon, I think, is launching one. Sony also has 100 STF now for the mirrorless. This is for the Sony A mount, and this one, if you see, it actually has T-stops, so I can control the aperture as well as the T-stop on this lens, and it actually has two blades. You may be able to see. So that's actually the second blade. There is a second one behind it, and this is kind of a specialty lens, and I just love using it. First of all, it's manual, and it's really sharp, and but it's more interesting. It's actually a very different looking portraiture that comes out of it. So now that we have gone over some of the basics, and I've told you about Rajneesh and I and how far we go back, let's get with a small presentation that I have. I'll share my screen. And if you have any questions, अगर आपके पास कोई question है तो आप उसको करिए. As Rajneesh and I will answer towards the end of it. So let me share the screen. I'm having some technical difficulties. Now I tested it, it worked fine.
Guys, just let us wait. Probably Manish जो है वापस आ रहे हैं. मुझे लगता था कि एक बुरी नेटवर्क कनेक्टिविटी सिर्फ हमको इंडिया में प्रॉब्लम देती है. अभी लगता है कि मनीष भी चले गए हैं, और कोई बात नहीं, डेटा है, डेटा ऐसा होता रहता है. बट सम वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग्स. मनीष वापस आए हैं. यस मनीष, वेलकम बैक.
So hopefully, let me see if it works this time. और जैसे मैंने बोला, I will share this. Okay, there we go. और ये छोटा सा पावर पॉइंट है. मैं कल रात को आधे घंटे बैठ के I'll just decided, okay, I'll put a few images, pictures, and just briefly talk about what we all need to look at. ठीक है? So it's more about not just poses but also lighting. As you will see, how you choose lighting, and in this model, Sterling, she is one of my favorites. She's a ballet dancer, and उसकी आंखें नीली हैं. So I found a place where उसकी आंखों को accentuate करने के लिए there was a blue light, and we can go into more details of lighting, and maybe एक अलग से पूरा session उसके लिए dedicate कर सकते हैं, including OCF. Shadows, how the shadows fall on the face and how it gives a three-dimensional structure is important. अभी आप उतना ही समझिए कि sometimes you don't want the light to be very flat. Sometimes you want to bring out the features of the face. So when you are shooting, आपको ये decide करना होगा कि आपके पास किस तरह का mood it needs to convey. Um, Dark and moody. So sometimes people like uh, you don't want very bright lights, or it kind of like a grungy look. And this can actually be determined by what, if you're shooting for somebody else, it's good idea to actually know कि वो उनको क्या चाहिए. If they like dark and moody, maybe you can shoot dark and moody. If they like fun and energetic, like this will kind of fall in that fun and energetic, where you're not, the model is not just posing, it's actually a little more than that. It's smiling, and there is an action involved, there's a little bit of energy. Then there is light and airy. Yeah, wedding photography may, this can be an important thing, where everything is like pastel colors, very we can probably go through some examples, but obviously time constraint today. Sensual and romantic, that will cover a lot of areas within that. Can be an engagement shoot, can be a couple shoot that is not necessarily an engagement, can be a boudoir photography, things like that. Editorial or artsy. Editorial artsy are usually more, अगर आप magazine में देखें तो you will see more of a fashion photography, where it's more posed. Sometimes it can be awkwardly posed, awkward pose, like completely bending it, bending in ways that you normally don't bend. कई बार आप देखे होंगे कि लोग, the model may be leaning like completely backwards. That may be artsy and editorial, but not necessarily something आप shoot करोगे. But these are just a few types of moods that you can use in your photography when you are shooting portraits. It can also be determined by who your model is. If India में तो उतना नहीं है, but here if you find people with like black hair, and I mean a black लड़के भी लगाते हैं काजल वगैरह, and they wear chains and all. If though that's the kind of model I have, then dark and moody probably is a good fit for them. The one thing I will say is you can do it both ways. कि आप lighting ही ऐसा choose करो कि it will be dark and moody, or you can do it in post processing. Although my preference always goes to what you shoot out of your camera should be focused on that. So अगर आप किसी के लिए shoot कर रहे हो तो it's a good idea to understand उनको क्या चाहिए. If you're shooting with a model, then you can probably see, okay, this model fits this profile more. Okay. Then we are talking about ambience. Let me go up here. I should have been in this mode. Location and ambience. Location, if you see image जो right side में है buildings के साथ जो image है, actually this whole image is not, इसमें PowerPoint ने मुझे allow नहीं किया जल्दी इसको set करने के लिए. But I wanted to get not just the model, but also what was going around her. And one of the things we always think about is, oh, we are taking, we need to blur out everything. हमेशा blur out completely is not a good thing. You want a perspective कि कहाँ पे आप shoot कर रहे हो, क्या हो रहा है आसपास. Otherwise, you might as well shoot in a studio with a backdrop, right? अगर आपको सब चीज़ avoid करना है तो. But this one is more of an environmental portrait, where and here I use the 55 lens. So you can see that the whole thing gives me an ambience of, okay, the model is in a city. Okay. Now, another thing I would like to bring out while we are on the subject is the eyes. Hamesha eyes are the prime focus point of when you're shooting. That's what you want to lead everybody into, and that is why when I use my cameras, eye autofocus is a huge part of it, and my camera can literally track the model, whether they're running or dancing or whatever. It will literally track the eye, not the face, not any part of the body. It's always focused on it because eyes हमेशा आपको अपने अंदर खींचेंगे. And eyes में एक catch light होना चाहिए. That always helps. if you especially like in the जो downtown वाला photo देख रहा है इसमें आपको शायद screen में पता नहीं दिख रहा है कि नहीं, but you can see a speck of light reflection of the flash. Now in this case I used a flash, and I'll probably go over a few setups quickly after we go over these slides. But that's also an important part. Try to get some catch light in the eye, some reflection. It doesn't have to be a flash, it can be a window light if you're shooting naturally. Okay? Shooting with female models. अगर आप female models के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, आप left side में भी देखिए, यहाँ पे model and Sydney is dressed up as in a more of a Western cowboy style. So more of the ambience that location I chose here in this case is actually a park, but it kind of looks like a Western country look. So going on to the location aspect of this, you don't have to find really good locations. Sometimes it's right in your neighborhood. आप थोड़ा सा बाहर निकलो and you'll find it doesn't have to be like a proper place. You can make it look good. It's all about lighting. It's all about how you compose. Composition is important. And so that's basically, this is just a neighborhood shopping area जहाँ पे एक tree मिला, and then so you get a little bit of texture and little bit of ambience. And it's a good idea to shoot obviously golden hours or early morning, not necessarily golden hours, because that can also be a challenge sometimes with the skin tones. लेकिन early morning में जब shadows are long, आपके shadows लंबे जा रहे हैं, then it's a good time to shoot, whether it is in the morning or in the evening. Okay. Here there are a few examples of use of lighting. इसमें लेफ्ट के जो दो फोटोग्राफ आप देख रहे हैं, इसमें लेफ्ट वाला तो completely it's using natural light, ambient light. This was actually after a session, Sterling के साथ एक session करने के बाद restaurant के बाहर बैठे थे, and these are the photographs taken. And in this particular case, I actually used a very small shutter speed because this was very dark, and जो light आप देख रहे हैं वो सिर्फ मशाल जैसी lights थी sides में, and actually you can see one behind her, and that I used to light up the back, kind of give a.
Sorry, शायद आप slide change करना भूल गए.
Oh, you're not seeing the lighting slides?
No.
अब ठीक है?
Yes.
अभी बताना, मैं I'll go full screen क्योंकि I thought let me change again. Can you see?
ना अब है, हाँ अब है.
ठीक है?
अभी ठीक.
Okay. So left side का जो फोटो आप देख रहे हैं उसमें it was taken in a restaurant, in front of outside a restaurant, and उसमें मशाल जैसी लाइटें हैं, एक पीछे एक लाइट पीछे है, and there is one light I think on the left, and otherwise it's very dark. So it is very high ISO, but modern camera mein I regularly shoot 6400 ISO also, and this actually may be one of those, and it's still tack sharp and really good colors. So the goal here is also to get a little bit of rim light, so you can separate the model a little more by having a light behind her and posing in a way that you can still see the light. They're not completely dark. No shadows around the eyes. I mean, you can sometimes not allow this. I didn't use a flash because we were just sitting and talking at that point. ये हुआ था like dance session के बाद, street dancing session के बाद. Beach wala jo light hai, that was actually taken during a day and during a session that I was working with some other photographers to show how to on a actually same session but actually hands-on with this model, and there was a male model also. And in this case also the rim light is being used. We did have a flash here, but it was far because I was working with a large group here. And the right side is actually a good friend of mine. He's also a photographer. In this case, we are looking at use of this actually happened during one of my squad meetups, and we were walking and I suddenly noticed the sky turned really bright, burning like fire jaisa tha asman mein. So we decided to take quick shots of each of us, and this was an outcome. And in this case, you can see that I wanted a little bit sharpness. You can bring out, especially with men, that actually works. And the model is posing not just for the thing, but also the light placement is so that I get some shadows on one side. Not a lot of shadows, but just enough that you give a three-dimensional look to it. और आईज में भी आप देख रहे हो कैच लाइट एंड कैच लाइट जो आप देख रहे हो उसका पोजिशनिंग लाइट का ऐसा होना चाहिए कि इट शुड बी ईदर राइट इन द मिडल ऑफ द आईज और स्लाइटली अबव इट that's also useful. I personally like larger catch light. Some people like it smaller, but that's up to you. As long as there is a reflection and something glitter going on in the eye, it actually makes for a good image. एंड एक और चीज मैं बताना चाहूंगा, पोजिशनिंग ऑफ हैंड्स. जब आप मॉडल्स के साथ काम करो, स्पेशली फीमेल मॉडल्स, यूजुअली यू वांट टू अवॉइड फ्लैट हैंड. हमेशा साइड हैंड का साइड इज अ गुड वे टू गो अबाउट इट. एंड यूजुअली समटाइम्स आई आल्सो मिस इट. And then leaning back on it's this is something actually it's better done in person than on a show, or maybe at some point we can have a model and show it to us. Actually, that is I may actually have an online session. We were planning on it with a model on model posing session for my group, but coronavirus ke karan we have had to shut down everything, so we are not doing that. But when I do that, I will probably share part of the video on how to pose as an extension of this. And feminine model, obviously you want the curves to show, the hands to show along those lines. A good thing is, and you will so see here, this is on the photo left में देख रहे हैं, उसमें एक आँख के सामने से बाल जा रहा है. Ideally, I would have liked to avoid that, but this was not a photo that was we were just taking casually. You can always remove it using Photoshop, but those are the kind of things you need to watch. And I'll bring up some other things that you need to watch when you are shooting photographs or portraits. So here is a couples shoot. This was more like a engagement ceremony. So in this case, the lighting, obviously there are two opposite lights here, sources. In one, the sun is behind the models, and I wanted some of that water glitter to show as a sparkle. So it kind of adds flavor to the picture, that positioning. And the model, now in this particular case, you cannot, you will not see that. But if we are doing a couple shoot, there are other things to watch for. I don't know if I put one picture to show that, but female model को हमेशा सामने रखना है. If their hands are wrapped around, female का हाथ should be always covering the male's hand. Okay, and priority should always be given to the female. Usually, I mean there can be an exception, but that's so. If I in my camera, if I'm shooting a couple, I will register the female face as the priority. So if there are like 5 or 10 people, a particular person, that will be my priority. Especially useful in. Is everything okay, Rajneesh? I heard a beep.
No, absolutely no issues.
Okay.
Everything is okay.
Okay. So in wedding, especially for example, दुल्हन का को आपको priority देना है, तो if your camera allows you, make the priority for the bride, for the groom, sorry, for the bride, दुल्हन के लिए, and then second priority can be groom. So if there are multiple people in the room, the camera can detect the right person that you want to focus on. In this one, the first picture that you see on the left, उसमें light पीछे है, so I get some rim light effect. You can see it along the hair. On the other one, I actually wanted to capture the blue sky that was in the background. And if you have blue sky, I wanted a little bit of the grass also. It kind of adds texture and color against the blue. And then obviously my models were dressed up in maroon or red. So this kind of gave me 3 or 4 colors to work with. And then the sun is actually behind me, kind of like behind to the right of me. So I get this mood. And then the posing itself, if you notice, neither of these two photographs may the models are looking at the camera. It doesn't always have to be that way. Sometimes natural posing is the best posing, especially with couples. You do not want to have them pose all the time. There's some pictures obviously you want to do that. Some pictures you just shoot. And so I probably the right one I probably took burst mode, and I just kept the one that I like the most. This one is more like I'm flying away and you hold me. And this is more interactive, like the more they are interacting with each other rather than looking at the camera. So that's also important thing to note. Here are a couple of other examples. On the left, Emory American Airlines के साथ पायलट एंड एक दिन बोली कि चलो उसका फोटो ले लेते हैं. So we use that as a off-camera flash training session for my squad. And in this case, you can see the posing, the hand cup placement. आप देखिए, hand cup placement. Hand is not showing flat on the face. A flat hand can sometimes look very awkward, especially for women. Side view is what you want to go after for most part. Now there are other things about when I brought up field of view and things like that. This one was taken with 135 lens because I had the space to work with. But if you get too close, sometimes you can get a blur, a good background blur by going closer to the subject. So background blur depend करता है clear aperture पर, but also distance, आपका distance camera से model का distance, and also model के पीछे जो background है कितना दूर है वो background. जितना दूर होगा background उतना आपको ज़्यादा blur मिलेगा, उतना smoother blur मिलेगा. But so you can actually achieve kind of big time background blur using smaller focal lengths also. लेकिन उसका risk है कि you will start distorting the face. इसलिए आप लंबा focal length अगर use करोगे तो you can maintain that distance and still get the blur. अगर आप right side का image देखें तो यहाँ पे model are interacting again. This is another dynamic pose. इसमें model interact कर रहे हैं and they are walking. So this again is another image that taken with burst mode. And burst mode क्यों? And the reason I took is you have to look at the feet placement. So as they are walking, if you take 20 frame per second, I can take the pictures, or 10 in most cameras. What I will do is I'll just shoot at 20 FPS or 10 FPS depending on the situation. And then I will look at the position of the legs. First of all, you want to make sure that all legs are showing. अगर एक leg पीछे hide कर रहा है, and I will actually show, the next slide will actually show that. You probably don't want to keep that. The other one is, in this one, if you see the उनका जो right leg है, that actually is almost hitting the ground, and the left leg is, their left leg is actually on the ground. अगर उसको आप reverse कर दो, it will have a different effect. So you have to watch for these little details when you are posing, when you are composing, and how you shoot. Okay, let's go to the next slide. These are additional examples of dynamic posing. Actually, let me go back to this slide again. I said dark and moody, fun and energetic. So these two that abhi aap jo dekh rahe hain, that actually fills here where it is fun and energetic. Agar aap kisi magazine ke liye shoot kar rahe hain, then I would say editorial or artsy. So this fun and energetic is where you are basically, it's a dynamic shooting where there is a lot of motion and I'm using very high shutter speed. Now on this, राइट साइड में आप देखोगे कि दो फोटोग्राफ्स मैंने डाले हैं एंड दे आर एक्चुअली राइट नेक्स्ट टू ईच अदर एंड आई थिंक आई may have shot this at either 10 or 20 fps, which is usually if I'm shooting burst mode, that's what I'm going to do. And I was talking about the leg placement. If अगर आप राइट वाले फोटो राइट साइड का फोटो को आप देखें तो you cannot even see the leg feet. Now this actually happens very fast, so you don't have the luxury of choosing when to click. All right. Uh, Within 1 second, I will probably have 20 frames, and then in 10, 20 frames, I will see one frame where you can at least see the feet here. अगर आप बीच वाला फोटो में देखें, so that's the difference. एक मिनट. So that is important. आप उसमें आप ध्यान दीजिए कि it's not just always about face. एक और चीज आप देखिए हाथ. Both hands are showing. Here, the second hand is kind of hidden. So the right side का जो photo है, I will not use that. It's the left one that I will use. You can see both hands. You can see the both legs, and of course both feet. In this case, it feels like it looks weird, right? So this is some of the things you have to watch for. Some other examples of composition on how you can add. बीच वाला आप देख रहे हैं काफी feminine pose है. You right side वाला आप देखेंगे. It kind of I use the architecture to kind of flow into the image. And Jalen actually is a published model. वो न्यूयॉर्क वगैरह में catwalk के लिए जाती है. And Tatum and Sterling are actually ballet dancers. And it's actually, if you find ballet dancers in India, they are actually the best people to work with. And all of them actually tend to be that way. They know how to pose with you without having to instruct too much. And यहाँ पे आप देख रहे हैं the Tatum का जो first वाला photo जो है, उसमें use of shadow along with ये कपड़ा clothing. Windy था थोड़ा तो utilize that. Color and lighting. अगर आप first वाला image, I actually am a big proponent of black and white. Maybe because I started with Yashica matte. But इसमें आप अगर एक चीज देखें तो black and white actually does a very good job putting focus where you want it to be. So color is not always better. And when I shoot with manual lenses, I actually use black and white setting in my camera. I shoot RAW and JPEG. Usually I throw away the JPEG, but not when I shoot with black and white. And here is what happens. If you shoot RAW, your camera probably has a setting where you can choose the style, color, creative style. Sony calls it creative style. Usually I choose natural or clear or portrait. And because that's where the color is most important. You don't want to choose vivid or some of other settings because then your skin tones and all start to look bad. But I always use raw images to get the outcomes. However, when I shoot black and white, what I'm doing is I am actually seeing the camera, all the image in black and white, and it captures the JPEG in black and white, but all the color information is in raw. So if I want a color picture of the left one, I will actually just use the raw file and get that. This one is out of camera and raw will have the color. So I can actually have both. And I can share why I use black and white shortly. Actually, yeah, I think I may be able to do that if we have time. Image on the right, another posing. Unfortunately, I couldn't avoid her hand hiding behind the rails. You would want to avoid that. There is actually a second one where I actually corrected that, but this was the one I wanted to show. Another example, कैसे you have to make sure that you are seeing everything you need to see. Here, Two more examples. Kylie ka image on the left hand side, if you see, generally people like it. I framed it on at a park on a stone structure, but I kind of didn't like it as much क्योंकि अगर आप देखें इसके ऊपर उनके सिर के ऊपर से ये पेड़ निकल रहा है. There are situations where you would want to avoid that. So I took a different photograph of the same scene, but making sure. So this one I took without realizing, and then I realized my mistake. Oh, the tree doesn't look right. So I actually will move a little bit and make sure that there's no obstruction, and at least I can see the head completely. Image on the right is a situation where I actually blurred out most of the things because I wanted the focus entirely on the model. And again, posing is all important. You want to see both hands. And it's always a good idea to take note of where you're cutting off the model. This is a half body model position. And then the other thing is composition. Now you don't always have the freedom to compose at the thirds, and that's fine. Eyes, I mean, ideally, if you're shooting off thirds, so you want to have the thirds on your lines and then compose it accordingly. This one is center, but I often shoot, a lot of my photographs are off center. Um, so these are some of the additional things it's worth knowing. And that's really basically my presentation. अगर मेरा Instagram भी है Illuminer IG, and this dog actually was just walking by while I was doing one of, I think it was the shoot. I saw, turned around, and there was a dog walking, and I just thought I'll take that picture. And मेरे camera में I also have animal eye focus, so the camera actually, if I set it to that, it will continue to focus exactly on the eyes. Okay. Let me. All right.
Right. So we'll start taking questions in case there are questions. You can start typing your questions and comment. एक दो बीच में आए थे. अनुकृति ने पूछा था. So this is Anukriti, I believe.
Yes. So 135, 1.8.
ये मेरे ख्याल से he wants to know about the clear focus.
It's a term called clear focus. I mean clear aperture. What clear aperture is, basically your lens is 135 millimeter focal length. Okay? And 1.8 is your aperture. Aperture is basically the opening. आपका lens के अंदर जो opening है, this is fine. So अगर आप इसमें देखें, oops, I'm kind of disoriented here. You can see ये opening. मैं उसको जब close कर रहा हूँ, तो your aperture is closing down. Here I have opened it all the way to 1.4. So that's just the maximum it will go. That is, so how उसका जो radius है, this diameter is opening का physical diameter, that is 50 divided by 1.4. So when I'm saying 135, 1.8, 135 mm is the focal length and 1.8 aperture है, आप उसको divide करेंगे तो it's more like a lens with a 75 mm diameter. So the larger the diameter, the more background blur you will get. So you can get, if you use say 300 mm lens 5.6, अगर आप use करो, आपके पास 7300 है, you can use it for a good portrait as a portrait lens. Your 300 mm lens divided by 5.6 is same as using a 150 mm lens 2.8. So they will give you same kind of background blur. So that's basically what it means.
I think again Anukriti she again asked this thing.
No, men actually, you do not want to do less contrast. It's more for female. For women, usually you would prefer, not always, but generally speaking, I reduce contrast only for female, not for men. Sandeep's question, how important is makeup of the model to emphasize desired mood? It actually is very important. मैंने presentation के समय में example दिया कि if you have a model that likes to put kajal वगैरह, male model I'm talking about with chains, probably don't want light and airy. Then that's not why they are dressed up like that. They are all black and white, dressed up with piercings and all. Light and airy, romantic doesn't fit in that mode. That's when you are looking for dark and moody. So yes, your sometimes vibrance like fun and energetic. If your model is actually unfortunately मैंने वो photo नहीं डाला. I think no, I didn't send it to you either, Rajneesh. Very bright makeup, you probably want to make it more fun and energetic, but it can also be light and airy. But light and airy usually doesn't require a lot of makeup, or not in the sense that you want a lot of colors in there. But yes, your makeup can also determine how you want. But with a lot of makeup, a person, the photo can be light and airy as well. It's more about the ambience on what you are trying to present your subject as. I hope that answered the question.
A big compliment from Sanjay Shukla sir, Manish. You know,
Oh, thank you,
so,
Sanjay.
so this is there. और लेट्स वेट. संदीप ने थैंक यू बोला है. एनीवन एल्स? any further questions?
And I don't know kitne log mirrorless camera you guys. I was talking about using black and white as a tool for portraits, especially if you're using manual focus. So what I do is there is something called focus peaking. And let me go there. I don't know if it will show up. So when I'm shooting with black and white, I have a focus peaking. Oh, it's probably not the best way to illustrate. Everything will be black and white, and then I can actually choose focus peaking in red. So which basically, for what focus peaking does is it will show me where my focus point is. If I am focused here, all the red dots will be up here. So it actually allows me to focus quickly, and that's why I use and that's actually how I use action photography also. Like I'll shoot basketball using manual lenses, because then I can, if I'm shooting in black and white, I only have two colors, black and white in my screen, LCD screen or EVF. And I use focus picking color of red or yellow, usually red, because it gives me a contrast on, and I know where the camera I'm focusing. That actually is always useful. And then as an outcome of it, the camera ka JPEG jo aata hai, that is black and white, and I usually like black and white. But if I want color, I go to the raw. If that's a good option if you shoot raw plus JPEG. I shoot the three lenses I shared, 55, 85, and 135 are my favorites. Those are the lenses I will carry if I have to go for a portrait, for sure. By default, it's this one. This is the Zeiss Batis 85 1.8. This is always on my camera if I'm going. And then I'll carry my 135 1.8, which is a Sony GM, and the 55 Sony Zeiss 55 1.8. These are the three lenses. So I will carry the 135 and 55 if I have a lot of space to work with in the location. I'll use the 135. If I don't have, if I'm shooting indoors, for example, one of the dance shoots I was shooting, I ended up inside a restaurant. A restaurant people invited us. Why don't you just come inside and shoot inside? We'll let you do that. Now I couldn't have used 85 either, 135 out of question. 55 use किया मैंने उसमें जहाँ पे, so you just choose. But those are the three areas on full frame. On APS-C अगर आप use कर रहे हैं तो I will recommend 35 to 90. Keep 50 to 60 mm as your go-to lens for portrait. 35 will allow you to cover more when you, अगर आपके पास space नहीं है तो when you have space use them 85 to 90. Actually, that's a good question. I don't know, Rajneesh, if you want to do a flash photography session, we can do that at some point because unless I can touch on it and um, if that works better. I don't know who asked this question.
This
Throw some light on flash photography in the outdoors and how it works. I'll just touch on the subject briefly. That this the goal in the outdoor photography is to kind of overwhelm the sunlight. अगर आपके पास खूब ज़्यादा light है, so that's really the primary purpose of it, is to control the available light. अगर आप दोपहर को आप shoot कर रहे हैं, तो it's really difficult. It will be too harsh. अगर आप actually one model का जो photo देखा उसमें the hair kind of was blown out. That happened because it was in the afternoon and outside and bright sun. With a flash, if I had used the flash, I would have controlled the exposure, and sun ko overwhelm karne ke liye, I would use a flash. And actually, I do have some flash photography tips here. I use these guys. If I'm using just an on-camera flash, there is an OCF session we can do, off-camera flash. That can cover the whole range of things. But when you are shooting more like moving around and you don't want to carry the soft boxes and stuff like that, but in that case, I will recommend getting something like these. I have the mag mod versions, but you don't have to spend or whatever works for you. So I have, this is my on-camera flash. It's a Godox V862. This is a mag mod attachment. So this is the mag sphere. So if I put it this way, what it does is it diffuses the light. I can point it, or I can, depending on how I want to use it, I can use it as a bounce or in any way. This I like, this particular arrangement I like, MagSphere I like for smaller spaces. If I'm shooting outdoors with a on-camera flash, then this one, Mag Bounce. This is a same thing from MagMod, and it just goes, it kind of increases the power output. Now, the disadvantage with these flashes, I almost never shoot straight up. I'll never shoot. I rarely, almost avoid it, shooting straight into the person, because that creates very high hotspots. Hotspot is when you see too much flash and reflection of the person. This is always I like to diffuse the light. And we'll do an OCF session on how to set your exposure and what you need to look for, where to place the light. We can do all of that in a session.
तो एनीथिंग एल्स कमिंग अप, किसी और को कुछ पूछना है? मनीष, एक बात बताओ, मेरे पास भी मैग मोड है, मैक्सफियर भी है और मैग बाउंस भी है, और मेरा जो मैग मोड हैज लॉस्ट द कलर, वो थोड़ा सा येलोइश हो गया है. तो
दिस थिंग,
यस, अनफॉर्चुनेटली इट विल टेक मी सम टाइम टू ब्रिंग इट, मतलब टू शो इट टू यू, लेकिन मेरा जो है वो येलोइश हो गया है. तो अभी मेरे पास, मतलब आई कैन नॉट गेट इट रिप्लेस्ड बिकॉज मैंने इलीगली इंपोर्ट किया था अभी. तो येलो उसको कैसे कंट्रोल करूं, मतलब हाउ टू वाइट बैलेंस पे उसको कुछ कर सकते हैं अपन?
You can use that if it is affecting your light balance. It may not be affecting your white balance, so you may want to try it and see. When you use flash, usually you will get a little bit of more orangish, more warmer tones anyway. So it may or may not be affecting it. But clean karne, is it inside? Because this mine has been okay. It's been, I have had this for a long time.
The initial batch had some problem, and Magmod initially replaced that in few countries, but not in India.
Okay. Yeah, if there, I mean, one thing you would do always is, okay, maybe we can touch on that. If you have a white balance issue for any reason, like Rajneesh, I'm seeing your door is kind of gray. I might use that in raw processing to at least get closer white balance. Or you sometimes it may be, for example, I may actually sometimes place this behind the model and take or wherever I'm taking the thing, and then use this to white balance the scene if I have a question. Usually I don't have a problem of white balancing with my camera, because it looks like it's within 100 Kelvin, 150 Kelvin of the temperature it needs to. I always shoot auto white balance. I almost never do custom, unless I'm overcoming some wedding lights. Then I think you may want to or create this photography mein itna expansive hai, you can just keep talking about things and you that itself makes a whole different session. Like for example, if you're shooting in a wedding place jahan pe aapko jhalar light lage hue hain, sometimes they come out to orangish instead of white. That's where you can use your auto white balance, change from auto white balance to manual settings and all.
Manish, do you use light meters?
No, cameras do a good job on it. Now, most of the time, I'm also using my camera. My camera actually has, I use auto aperture priority a lot. It's the fastest way for me to take because manual, I can use it, but there is sometimes I just think that I make people wait too long. Landscapes, I like manual. Astrophotography, I love manual. But when I'm working with people, I don't want to wait. Then okay, let me see. I'm doing this. What I do is I just, like I said, if I'm shooting portraits, I might just set my minimum shutter speed to 1/250th of a second, and now I'm only controlling the aperture that I want to. It makes the my workflow very fast.
So this is Rahil bhai again. Rahil bhai कह रहे हैं कि Manish looking forward for a practical session with you in India with models.
Oh,
तो
I
राहिल
was
सर
rap.
गोवा चलना पड़ेगा मनीष की स्पेशलिटी के लिए और नहीं तो थाईलैंड चलना पड़ेगा.
यहाँ आ जाओ. अभी तो I was in India, Raipur, in December. Unfortunately, I couldn't come to Bhopal. Bhopal, actually, I have relatives there, and I used to travel to Bhopal quite a bit growing up. But yeah, next time when I'm there, I'll maybe we should plan something. At least wildlife, which is another area I can do. So I was just looking at Serengeti videos, and I'm almost tempted to go to Africa right now. So yeah, take some portraits of giraffes and lions.
मनीष टाइम बहुत हो गया 1 घंटे से ऊपर का सेशन हो गया है ना. और संदीप जैन कह रहे हैं कि फ्लैश फोटोग्राफी सेशन इज अवेटेड. तो फ्रेंड्स मुझे लगता है कि अगले 3-4 वीकेंड मनीष के अपने को पैक करना पड़ेगा.
वीकेंड में भी
संदीप इज डॉक्टर और संदीप अपने बैच का है. संदीप ने भी 89 12th किया हुआ है. So I met Sandeep when I moved to Bhopal in my first year of college. Sandeep ने recently Sandeep has also bought a Godox 685. But उसने यूज नहीं किया. साल भर हो गया संदीप को फ्लैश लिए और यूज नहीं किया है.
No, agar Sandeep, the first thing I would do is get one of these things. It doesn't have to be this one. It can be anything. That itself will take and always shoot. If you're shooting inside, like the ceiling is white. If you use white ceiling or gray ceiling, you can always bounce it off. It's always a good thing. I also shoot like passport photo. यहाँ पे अगर खींचने जाओ तो बहुत महंगा पड़ता है. I just do it at home. So you can use your flash in a variety of ways, but yeah, we'll have a flash session shortly.
Great, संदीप 2 साल तक ट्रैवल नहीं करने की बात कर रहा है. संदीप बांधवगढ़ चले क्या? तो वेरी डिफिकल्ट. चलो मनीष, थैंक यू वेरी मच.
थैंक यू.
आप तैयार हो जाना. 2-3 आपने कमिट कर दिए हैं सेशंस. एक फ्लैश फोटोग्राफी पे, इंडोर लाइटिंग पे, है ना. तो वंस यू आर रेडी वी विल अगेन मेक इट ऑनलाइन नाउ, राइट. बाय फ्रेंड्स. और चलो वी एंड द सेशन नाउ.
Okay. All right. See you all.
Bye.
Bye.